The first official question is essentially, how do you view the relationship between education and employment, especially within the context of the creative industries? Because I think for a lot of people, they might not necessarily know. They might not necessarily know, and especially with like those students who, whether they're just come to university or they've just almost, well, they're in their final year and they're sort of thinking about, they've got to start working on employment. They've got to fix up their CVs and stuff like that. What would be your answer to that relationship between employability and education?
So I've got sort of a personal history of that as well as sort of professional history. So I guess my journey with kind of my opinion forming on that kind of starts with my own sort of journey at school, sort of, being in a secondary school. And, I had lots of interest at the time, I'd say sort of photography, art, media, making music, video editing, and early YouTube, lots of different things that, me and my friends used to do sort of as hobbies outside of lessons. And those were things that weren't really picked up, I guess, by the education system yet. So I definitely had the experience of having lots of things of interest and hobbies that I did with my mates that weren't in the sort of curriculum. So I still sort of went through school and kind of went to university and stuff. But I would say, sort of looking back, that there are probably things I really could have harnessed at that time that I would have kind of got a lot of energy out of. If they were picked up academically, I think would have been really interesting to follow. Because they're all things I kind of developed kind of really basic skills in just on our own with kind of our friendship group without it really being in the curriculum. So I always kind of had the sense that, I went to school for, just doing the sessions and the lessons that were given to me, and then, other stuff, hobbies and things like that I would do outside. And kind of followed that path and kind of realized, I guess, in my mid-20s that, that didn't really sort of take me anywhere that I was that interested in. And, I still had all these other things that I wanted to do that I could sort of do freelance or kind of build on my own skill sets on, and end up sort of doing a few different things like writing and kind of photography freelance and kind of making some kind of income out of that outside of my full-time role. So that kind of got me thinking about the creative industries and opportunities available. So kind of in a roundabout way, that started the process of me thinking about whether or not young people get the opportunities that they or are allowed the opportunities to develop what their interests are. So during that time, I was working in a pub, sort of in my mid-20s, and I actually ended up started volunteering for a local music organisation that was down the road from me, and they essentially offer a kind of music courses to 16 to 19-year-olds. And the reason I did that was because I felt like I was a bit of a dead end myself. Sort of just working behind the bar. And I wanted to do something that, could get me some qualifications, kind of open my eyes a bit to kind of education and things that I could kind of get involved in to help. So I did that for about 6 months volunteering, sort of 2 days a week, kind of getting my expenses paid. And that kind of opened me up to, further education, kind of young people education. And then that started my journey. So following that, I kind of got offered a full-time role. And as I said, I worked in, I think it was about 7 or 8 years that I worked in further education from there. So that was for a few different organizations. So I've worked with kind of alternative provisions, which are sort of young people who kind of are outside the mainstream education system. But I've also worked with kind of, slightly more mainstream courses as well. But they've always had a creative lean. So I would say that from the education side, I had a lot of experience of young people's interests, talking to them. I was also sort of a UCAS advisor and a work experience kind of careers leader towards the end of my time in education. So I got a really good insight into young people and what they wanted to do. And, often would see that there's a bit of a mismatch between what their creative interests are and what they wanted to, I guess, produce and create, in opposed to what they were studying, even if they took a creative course. So that was sort of the first steps. And then after sort of about 7 years of that, I then, wanted to see it from a different angle. So as I said, I moved over to the charity, which I've been doing for 2 years now. And that's more sort of offering mentorship opportunities to young people. But I do work with a lot of schools and a lot of universities who put on careers fairs, and I liaise with a lot of different, students, but also teachers and, other stakeholders as well who work in that area. And I would say, that basically, there's definitely a disconnect between creative opportunity and kind of entry-level positions, I would say, and young people who are studying in the creative industries. So I've got a stat, because everyone loves a stat. I get sort of around round up emails from different organizations, and one of them was about Ravensbourne Uni and some of the research they did this year. And they found that 43% of young adults were interested in working in the creative industries. But then sort of when you look at how many of them then end up actually, following that through, or, having an entry level opportunity, that really goes down. So there's a massive interest, young people, lots of young people want to do something related to the creative industries. But in terms of, then, even if they study a course, finding an entry level position can be quite difficult. And I know that we're going to look a bit later about sort of some of the challenges that are faced. And I think, those are really key to talk about, because there's, a number of barriers that young people face on different levels that stop them from sort of ever getting to the starting line within the creative industries. So I'd say there's big interest, I'd say, and, we all know that there's exciting opportunities and sort of, there's growing opportunities in certain fields. But I would say that there's definitely sort of a disconnect between the education system, how it's set up in this country, and unfortunately sort of the way that the creative industries recruit. They're not, in my experience, very well sort of connected.